Good evening, my friends. It is your host of the ARCA Racing Podcast and Backmarker Battles, Colby Evans here, starting Park Car on Twitter. And we are here with a little bit of a short live stream that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I had posted a lot about this during a lot of Xfinity practice and qualifying, and it did occur that Carl Long has apparently posted an update on the MBM Facebook page. That is where this is publicly posted. So if you guys want to go check out that post, I have cleaned it up a little bit because obviously Carl typed it in the heat of the moment. We have the post here. I cleaned it up a little bit. And just to give an insight of maybe what happened in today's practice and qualifying session. Obviously, you guys know the basics. Brian Weber was the initial driver. Brian Weber did make his practice laps. Brian Weber just unfortunately wasn't up to speed, and they tried to put Timmy Hill in to make a couple of practice laps, try to get the car in the show. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. We'll go over the whole story in just a little bit. First, you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Park Car. Like and subscribe to the channel. We just hit 1,000 subs this morning. You guys are the best. 1,000 subs. Thank you guys so much. And yes, of course, make sure to check out racingexperts.com for all NASCAR media content. So let's get right into it. Today, MBM Motorsports has really struggled this year, which sucks to see. Obviously, you guys can see that by the shirt I'm wearing. I'm a big Carl Long fan. As you can see by up there, I'm a big Carl Long fan. I've been a Carl Long fan for a long time and following MBM Motorsports for a long time. I've even had the chance to work with MBM Motorsports at the racetrack a couple times. This year, though, has been a struggle. Pardon me, guys. I've had some throat issues, so I'm kind of parched. I've been a little sick all day. Sorry, but so they double DNQ at Daytona with the 13 of Timmy Hill and the 66 of Dexter Stacy. As you guys know, they were able to lock in at Auto Club with Timmy Hill. Unfortunately, even despite showing top 20 caliber speed, they could only manage 32nd. A near make the show, but DNQ with Mason Maggio at Las Vegas. And this weekend was no different. Another DNQ, unfortunately. And what I was kind of shocked to see was a lot of fan outrage. If you guys followed my account today, I posted, numerous updates of what the radio frequency was saying on the 66 car. And when I was posting some of the stuff about, the 66 not making the show, the 66, not having Timmy in, I was actually surprised at quite a bit of the backlash that MBM Motorsports was getting. And going over to MBM's Facebook page, it was even worse. It was pretty bad. People were heavily criticizing MBM and Carl Long. Why would you put a guy who hasn't been in the Xfinity Series in 20 years, hasn't been in a NASCAR vehicle of any kind in almost 10 years? Why would you put him in there? Why would you do this? Why would you do that? Come on, just put Timmy Hill in there. What happened to Chad Fincham? At the end of the day, what a lot of people don't realize, it does come down to money. I heard some good takes about it. I heard some disgusting takes of people just flat out being rude to lower tier teams. So we'll get into Carl Long's statement in a second. Obviously, you guys know Brian Weber. For people who don't know Brian Weber was, one of your local independent owner drivers, came into the Busch Series in the early 2000s, did a couple of starting parks for a couple of teams, and for his own team. His last Busch Series start was in 2003, ran a couple truck races in the early 2010s, and even attempted a couple of modified races. But overall, never really did that much in NASCAR and hasn't been in NASCAR in quite some time. If you guys know the brand Coma Unwind relaxation drink, that company had a big affiliation with Brian Weber himself. And so although he hadn't been in the series for a while, MBM Motorsports coming into Phoenix, obviously, they didn't really have a lot of funding secured for this year. Their full-time driver, J.G. Ailey, is not with them again this year, so it's kind of a race-by-race deal. We talked about this back in the Daytona Backmarker Battles review, that MBM did not have a full-season driver, and they were not doing well with selling races. So it's possible, you can't just, in this day and age, you can't just put a guy like Timmy Hill in the car. You just can't. You got to go where the money is, and unfortunately, if that means maybe bringing in a guy like Brian Weber, that's just how you have to do it, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Listening onto their radio frequencies, Like I said, it was just kind of business as usual. The crew was just kind of welcoming back. Brian even said, welcome back. And I was listening to Carl, and it was easy to tell just by the way that they were interacting. Obviously, Brian has had no simulator time, no seat time. They can't test. They can't test anymore, which I wish they would at least let them do like rookie tests. So this is Brian's first laps, and we only got 20 minutes. We don't have the, a couple years ago where it was 2 50-minute practice sessions. We only got 20 minutes. So they get Brian out there, and, he's just, by the way it's sounding on the radio, he's not doing very good. He's sliding all over the place, actually made contact with the 16 car. And as you guys saw, as they showed it on the broadcast today, he did make contact with the 20 car as well. And it was during there where we heard on the radio, or I heard on the radio, said, let's bring him in and let's get Timmy Hill in. So apparently Timmy Hill was there on standby, I guess, if it wasn't going well. So they got Timmy in the car. Timmy was able to get in 3 laps. They got him back out on track with about 3 minutes to go. Got him about 3 laps on track, told them what adjustments he might need to be able to make the show. And the crew was just giving him all kinds of encouragement. I mean, why not? You got to make the show. Because the 74 of CHK was actually showing very, very good speed and looked like they would easily make the show. And so Brian Weber had gone back to the hauler. Timmy Hill's in the car now. Get him out to the line. Hill's a second car out. Or was he the first or second car out? And I could just tell by watching the qualifying lap, he slips it up in turn 2. And I think that's just a case of Timmy, the setup wasn't what he exactly is used to, in my opinion. And also at the same time, you could see he got loose going into turn 1. The lap was just killed right after turn 1. And unfortunately, it would end up being one of the slowest cars in qualifying and would fail to qualify. MBM has now DNQ'd 3 of the first 4 races of the season and is still among one of the lowest cars in owner points. After I'd posted some stuff basing off the fact that this was MBM's, legitimately the worst start for MBM ever since the team's inception in 2014, when they were really just a start and park organization, only running about 10 races that year. I mean, it really doesn't count. But a lot of backlash, a lot of backlash for MBM saying, oh, that's what you get for putting a guy like Weber in the car. That's what you get, for doing something like this. You deserve to not make the race. Does Carl know that Brian hasn't been in the car in 20 years? Yes, he does. He does know that Brian hasn't been in the car in 20 years. In a long time. He does know this. You got to make a business decision. And on the MBM Facebook page, which the comments on that Facebook page got really ugly. I mean, if you thought Twitter, the comments were ugly, the Facebook comments got even more ugly. Carl Long would state the following. Now, this is not 100% his words, because I did clean it up a little bit, because Carl was probably typing this as fast as he could. So the grammar was a little off. So I cleaned it up just a little bit so it sounds just a little bit more clear. But this is coming from MBM Motorsports owner Carl Long. Guys, sorry you didn't like who I put into drive. As anyone knows, this race team is my only job, as well as keeping 20 other people at an income. Think of paying 20 people weekly. The fuel to come to the West Coast in a tractor hauler will be $10,000. The flights and hotel will be $12,000. The rent for lights for the month will be around $10,000. The insurance to put this stuff on the road is $3,500 a month. Last place for Xfinity is $9,000 to $15,000, depending on which track we're at. When I get sponsorship, meaning MBM gets its own sponsorship, I put Timmy or Chad in the car. They take care of my equipment and run hard. It takes about $25,000 to show up to a race with everything owned by MBM. JJ Ailey had some money last year and didn't go fast, but MBM was losing money at some races last year that he didn't have a sponsor. Guess what? Even with no sponsor, the bills still keep coming. Mason Maggio did an outstanding job at Las Vegas, but 10 to 12 laps on a track in a car you have never driven is a tall order for anyone to do, let alone a rookie. No SIM time like the big teams for him or us. Same with Weber today. Just need more laps. We can't test a car by rule. The big teams have simulators and factory test cars with wheel force. They do not share with teams on their program like MBM. If we had a $5 million sponsor, then we probably could join their simulator program. So you guys want me to run an experienced driver with little to no sponsorship? Sure, I'm all in. Tell me how to do this financially successfully. I have a lot of you complaining, but nobody with a solution. This post is yours. Don't put up any dumbass comments or I will delete you and possibly ban you from my account. Signed, Carl. And while Carl has posted those words, he is not wrong. He's not wrong. At the end of the day, if you want to get a man who is real with how much, racing costs, it is Carl Long. And right there, I feel like that post, it really says a lot. It takes, in this day and age, you can't just show up. People think the entry fee is what? I think the entry fee is what, $2,200, or did they raise that up? I remember last year somebody told me it was $2,200. That might have changed for this year. Not sure if that's the case, but I do know that it was $2,200 last year. Maybe it's a little bit more than that now. But overall, it does take about $25,000 to show up in this day and age. Last place purse money. I mean, people complain about the ARCA payouts all the time. Well, last place for Xfinity is still not much better for their costs. It wasn't $9,000 today, but for some tracks it's $9,000. For some tracks it's $15,000. Obviously, Carl can't give out the real numbers, but that's an estimate. Insurance, $3,500, not for per month. Flights and hotels, like the costs. And this is just for like MBM Motorsports. So you got to look at it from that perspective. And it really takes into account, wow, teams like JRM and Gibbs are just spending all this money. And it's just per weekend. But teams like CHK and MBM and JDM are spending money like this every week. It really puts into perspective just how much money it takes for even teams like them to get to the track. So I'm tired to an extent. I agree with Carl. I'm tired of people really criticizing a team like that because, for Mason probably could have got that car in the show if he would have just gotten some more laps. Not sure. I don't think Brian would have got the car in the show. But just for retrospective, people got to understand. You guys got to understand, man. You can't just put a guy, like in this day and age with this economy, you can't just put a guy in a race car with no sponsorship. What is Carl going to do? If last place purse money is what, $10,000, Carl's not going to spend $25,000 with Timmy Hill with no sponsorship just to make the race and spend $25,000 to earn 10. You can't do that. You can't do that and sustain, a successful racing business. Like I said, Carl's got 20 guys to pay. He's got his family to feed at home, his lovely family. I mean, Carl's wife is a sweetheart. God damn, I wish I could see Danielle again sometime. But he's got a family to feed. He's got guys to pay. He's got a shop to pay for. So it's like, you can't just put Chad in the car. You can't just put Timmy in car. If you have to take the money willingly going into a DNQ, sometimes you just got to do that. A former MBM crew chief, Brian Wortman, you guys might know Brian Wortman on Twitter. He was a former crew chief for Jeff Green during his TriStar days. He actually chimed into a post. As well on this, saying, like Carl said in his post, it costs $25,000 to enter a race now, and he needs drivers with sponsors to keep the team running. And this is where I think it really comes in. The cost for an Xfinity team went up almost $15,000 in the span of one season because of the economy's inflation, rule changes, and Xfinity cannot rely on Truck and Cup Series tires to race on anymore. That is why teams like Jimmy Means and Morgan Shepherd went out of business. He actually put up a decent example saying that Brian Wortman used to spot for Morgan Shepherd. If you guys remember Morgan Shepherd in the 89 car, the start and park stuff they used to do about 4 or 5 years ago. They used to say that, they used to go to the track for about $10,000 a weekend and make $19,000 to $23,000 by finishing dead last. Now, NASCAR added 2 more cars to Xfinity to 38, increased the entry fees with inflation, food and gas prices, lodging and food, everything went up. Now it costs $15,000 to do one race now, and last place pays $11,000. So they went from making $9,000 to a race to losing $4,000 a race in just a few seasons. Now, I do see some people in the chat saying, bottom line is the 66 just doesn't have the speed to an extent, that is your opinion. You can have that. I think it also, one thing that I was going to say about that too, one of the things is it's leased motors. As we've seen in the Xfinity series, motors have become so much more crucial. You got to get with the times. You know, the day and age of running a leased motor at just the plate tracks, we're way past that now. You got to run a leased motor almost every single race if you want to be successful. And that's why I feel like we've maybe noticed this year with some of the lower tier teams that maybe aren't able to get leased motors every race or are forced to use the same motor per race. And unfortunately, MBM does fit into that category that they cannot afford leased motors every single race. So just by that value alone, they will be slower. And I'm not saying that the car that even Brian Weber was driving was a bad car. I mean, I think with the right setup in that car and with plenty of practice time, I mean, that car could still easily contend for a top 30, top 25, usually what MBM is capable of running, and maybe even a top 20 on a good day. How old the motors they lease are, I don't know. That information, trust me, I wish I knew that information, but that information is top secret. Or teams like Carl Long, I mean, when he ran a Chevrolet at Daytona, he used a Hendrick leased motor. He used a Hendrick leased motor for Timmy Hill when he finished second at Daytona last year. You know, usually teams like JDM, they will try to get Chevrolet leased motors for that race. And it's very easy to tell. All you kind of have to do is look at the qualifying speeds for Daytona. That'll pretty much tell you who had a leased motor and who had a home-built motor. Like, for instance, Timmy Hill at Daytona had the number 13 car had a home-built motor, MBM in-house motor, whereas the 66 of Dexter Stacy had a Hendrick-built motor. So that just gives an insight, guys. There's a reason why these teams are slow. They're not slow because they suck. They're slow because they really just don't have the funding. And at the end of the day, you can't just put a guy like Timmy Hill. As much as we all love Timmy Hill, and believe me, you probably won't find a bigger Timmy Hill fan than me. You can't just put a guy like Timmy Hill in the car when you're spending $25,000 to $30,000 a weekend. Bring in Timmy Hill, even if he finishes 20th, you're still going to make couple $1,000s in profit. That's still not enough. You got to bring in a guy who's going to bring in enough sponsorship to where, you know, you can bring in the sponsor dollars and the purse money and be able to make a profit and go on to the next race. You know, we've seen that with many organizations, and unfortunately, Carl hasn't found a full-time driver for that. I hope Mason does come back. I think Mason, again, just being a rookie, not having the amount of laps. I mean, he missed the show by a 10th. So I really hope Mason does come back with Carl. But it just shows, guys, you need a leased motor to be ultra competitive in the Xfinity series in this day and age. And you just need, and a lot of teams have just fallen behind on that. MBM, unfortunately, I will have to say, in some ways has fallen behind on that. That's no criticism to them at all. It's just Carl and his guys, they just can't afford it. Or every single race, I mean. They just can't. So, but I'm tired of people just absolutely bashing the organization, saying for what were they thinking of putting a driver in there? Well, you know what? Brian brought the money, okay? It's that simple. He brought the money in, so they're going to let him race. And, you know, like I said, though, Carl's also got to make a business decision. Well, I'm sure Brian knew going ahead of time, if it wasn't going good in practice, we're going to get Timmy in the car and see if we can make the show. Brian understands. Brian's an owner driver. You know, he understood probably what he was getting into, but just all the hate that teams like Carl Long were getting, and even teams like CHK, you know, were getting for just why are you even showing up at this point? Guys, the cars are not the biggest problem. It's just the motor. The cars are built just fine. It's just at the end of the day, with some of these lower tier teams, they can't afford these leased motors that even teams it's just hard to say. Every team in the garage, I don't know about leased motors every single race, but some teams are running better motors than others, and some teams will struggle. It's just that simple. You know, it would be more affordable for the teams if the series went to Ilmore. No, trust me. The last thing the Xfinity series needs is a spec motor. Trust me, spec motors are not helping the truck series at all. And that's a hot take right there. Spec motors are not helping the truck series. especially not helping the ARC series as well. So, yeah, no. Last thing Xfinity needs is to go to a spec motor. But that's what I'm just trying to say. Everybody's running leased motors nowadays. These lower tier teams are just having trouble keeping up. And unfortunately, NBM falls into that category. And if they have to bring in a driver like Brian Weber to help cover the costs to get to the track, even if they might be walking into a DNQ, well, sometimes you just got to make those kind of business decisions, whether the fans like it or not. I don't think it's worth having people bash NBM. I don't think it's worth people bashing Brian Weber, when they're just out there trying to have fun and trying to make a living. At the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. It is a little concerning, though, for what NBM has planned going forward. Obviously, with no full-time drivers announced, kind of going in a week-by-week deal. They do have that guy from overseas. I forgot his name, but he's running for them at COTA. They don't really have anyone else lined up for Atlanta right now, or at least that we'll know when the entry list comes out. But there's just reasons. There's reasons why NBM is not with those top tier teams. And it's not because the team sucks. It's not. All right. At the end of the day, you look at all these other organizations that have full-time drivers, that have full-time sponsors. When you look at a team like NBM who don't have a full-time driver or a full-time sponsor, yeah, they're going to struggle. They're going to be a little bit slower than what they, were normally at a couple years ago. It's not that shocking. But it doesn't mean that the team sucks. It doesn't mean that the team deserves all the hate. And it doesn't mean that Carl Long is a bad team owner. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get the car to the track, get the car unloaded, and give it your best shot. And if you don't make the race, it sucks. But, you at least they know that they can cover the costs for those weeks and be able to move on to the next week and give it their best shot again. But just, again, the hate is unnecessary for a team like this who's just trying to get by. It's all I'm saying. But you also got to understand, folks, we're not in 2003. We're not in 2008 with these costs. We're not in 2015 with these costs. Let's face it, in a real world situation, the costs are the highest they've ever been for, doing a race team. And like I said, it's put guys like Morgan Shepherd out of business. He said that the 52 is out of business. I don't know if that's 100% confirmed. I know Jimmy Means still has race cars sitting in his shop, probably ready to go. But, let's face it, if there's no pay drivers he can get, there's no reason for him to show up to the track. And, he's in his mid-70s now. So, there just might not be an incentive for him to show up. But from being able to make, I think it's the realist right here for doing a start and park team, from going to making $9,000 a race by start and parking as late as 2018 to now losing. So keep in mind, if you were to start and park, I think that puts into real perspective right here. If you were to start and park an Xfinity car in this day and age, you show up, you buy the tires, you run your laps, you park the car. More than likely, you are going to lose money on that now. You are going to lose money on that. And I think that, number one, shows you why the start and parks are not here. They're not in the truck series anymore. There's no incentive to do it, and there's no more profit in it either. So, yes, just be real, folks. Be real. We're in an era where, you need the best motor, you need the best sponsors, and you need the best drivers to get by week to week. And with all due respect, Timmy Hill, as much as we want him to have those $5 billion sponsors, he just doesn't have it. Do we all wish he did? Yes, because, who isn't it? If you're not a Timmy Hill fan in this podcast, I don't know why you're watching me. Everyone loves Timmy Hill. But unfortunately, he doesn't have the $5 million sponsors. So NBM has to get by with who they can get. And if all they can get is Brian Weber for that race, if he covers the costs and allows NBM to get by for that week and go to Atlanta, then so be it. It might not be the most popular decision, and it might ruffle some feathers with some longtime fans, but it doesn't mean you got to go on Carl's NBM Facebook page and spew these hurtful comments. It's not the right thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do. At the end of the day, you're just being a DARF, a dumbass racing fan. And the last thing any race fan wants to be called is a DARF. So to all the DARFs out there who are complaining about NBM Motorsports and their decisions, well, you have officially been labeled a DARF. That's all I can say about that. So, yeah, I hate it for NBM Motorsports. Obviously, in this day and age, with costs at an all-time high, it sucks. It does put into perspective, will NBM Motorsports run the whole year at this point? I'm not going to confirm or deny that, obviously, but I hope they can still find a way to run the whole season at this point. But being how low in owner points they are, I mean, at this point, it's not even about getting to the top 30 10K bonus. It's about just making races. Now, although the 74 did make the show, they are still ahead of that car in owner points, so I'm curious to see what they're going to do for Atlanta. Would love to see Timmy back at Atlanta, but again, it all comes down to sponsorship. When, for super speedway type qualifying, again, we're going to see all the teams that had leased motors at Daytona will probably have leased motors again going into Atlanta, because now with Atlanta being super speedway type qualifying, you got to have the speed in the car. In the chat, Carl is completely in the wrong. I mean, again, that you can have your own opinion on it. Weber damaged the 66 and the 20. Again, I'm not going to deny it. Should Weber have been out there? Probably not. It had been a long time. It'd been a long time since Weber in a car. I am not going to disagree with that. Was Weber probably the right choice? No, I am not going to disagree with that. He slid up into the 20. He couldn't hold his line. And I think it was after that, actually, when Carl brought him in. And then that's when they put Timmy in. But at the end of the day, Carl, you got to say, he's just taking a chance. He's walking into that kind of situation. And you know what? Fine. Maybe he knows he's walking into that type of situation. But if you're Carl Long, would you rather put Timmy in the car and possibly risk DNQing and losing as much as, $10,000 for this race, or get a guy like Brian Weber, be able to pay off the sponsorship if a DNQ happens, and be able to come out of Phoenix, maybe still not losing as much as you would if you had Timmy in the car? There's paid drivers, and then there are guys who haven't run in a car in 20 years. There's no defending that. Again, that is your opinion, and you can have that opinion. And I can respect that opinion to an extent, because do I think Brian Weber should have been in the car? No, I don't think Brian Weber should have been in the car. That's no disrespect to Brian Weber. I just don't think he should have been in the car. But at the end of the day, when you got to make a business decision to keep the team going, you got to put in who you got to put in. You could say it just makes a lot of people look bad. It's not intended to make anybody look bad. It just sucks all the way around, because, it makes, in a way, it does put them in a bad light, but there's no need to see it as a bad light. And, for Timmy Hill, again, I said it a couple minutes ago. We all love Timmy Hill. We all want to see Timmy Hill continue to run for NBM. Timmy does want to focus more on his truck team for this season. If they want to sponsor, see, at the end of the day, though, Decker, she's got to find that sponsorship dollars. She doesn't have all that kind of money to throw around. It's not easy to find paid drivers in this day and age, and that's what all people also got to realize. You also got to find a driver that's willing to drive for your organization. I can't reveal exactly who, but Carl reached out to multiple drivers who had sponsors behind them over the offseason to drive his car. And unfortunately, some of those deals didn't quite pan out. So, yeah, if those deals don't point out, then you got to go with who you can find. And if Brian Weber is all you can find, then you got to do what you got to do. I can't really explain it any other way. And then everyone's like, well, this is the point where Timmy Hill deserves better. Timmy Hill deserves better. Hot take, Timmy Hill more than likely had his career saved by NBM. And that's no disrespect to Timmy Hill, because, obviously I freaking work for him. But Timmy Hill probably wouldn't have lasted as long in NASCAR without NBM. Without Timmy Hill, NBM might not have been as along either. It's a hot take for sure. Trust me. And if Timmy Hill sees this, he might text me later saying, why'd you say that? I don't know. But to me, that's just a hot take that you could disagree with or agree with. But I really do think they kind of saved each other's careers, in my personal opinion, because Timmy could take these cars on old tires and give them decent runs. And Carl kept Timmy racing with all this time, even despite, Timmy had at that point, lost his full-time rides with Rick Ware. Timmy Hill deserves a ride in better equipment. I agree. But when it's all, when Timmy wants to mainly does focus on his truck team. If he got hired by a full-time Xfinity organization, then he'd probably go full-time Xfinity racing. But for now, he's going to stick with his Xfinity operations. And yes, like I said, MBM has 2 next-gen cars. If you guys want some figures, Carl says it costs $160,000. And I'm not making that up. $160,000 for an open team like MBM to run a next-gen car. That is ridiculous for the Cup Series. And that is I don't even know what to say to that. $160,000 to run one Cup race. Not even the Daytona 500, just one Cup race. Oh, again, you can have your opinion on this at the end of the day. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. We may disagree from time to time, but I'm never going to say anyone, nobody is in, I just don't feel like anyone's in the wrong here. You got to do what you got to do to get by. Last year, nobody could get a chassis. Why didn't they sell the chassis to help an Xfinity team? Because I believe last year MBM was actually renting out their next-gen cars as backups for Penske. That's why last year you saw JJ driving a Penske car. He unfortunately wrecked it at Texas, but that's why you saw JJ driving a Penske car, is because I believe MBM was letting Penske use their cars for backup cars. I don't think they're doing that anymore, obviously, because now that we've had a year go by, the parts have come in a little bit. The parts have come in a little bit more, and Penske's allowed to bring their own backups. But that's what Carl was doing. He was basically using his Cup cars, not having to race them, and was able to fund the organization. But yeah, so again, guys, you can have your opinion on this, good or bad, nice or mean, but they didn't run since Talladega. Yes, because they don't have the money. $160,000 a race. Sponsorship like that's just not sitting around anywhere. Not many drivers can even bring that kind of sponsorship. So it's a business decision. Yes, George Vargas in the chat. Yes, it's a business decision at the end of the day. If the fans disagree with it, then so be it. But Carl Long did what he had to do to get by for Phoenix. Did it work out, sadly? Unfortunately, it didn't. It didn't. It didn't work out, unfortunately. And it inquired a lot of unnecessary hate. An unnecessary hate for MBM Motorsports, and a lot of unnecessary hate to Brian Weber, and a lot of unnecessary hate to Timmy Hill as well. For this organization, they don't deserve it. They work just as hard as everyone in the garage. Believe me, I've been with them. I've seen it. I know. So that's all I can say here, folks. If you want to, like I said, if you want to go check out the official post for yourself and see all the other comments, just simply go to the MBM Facebook page. And I believe it's under, now it's not an actual post. It's in the comment section of their latest post, where simply they were talking about how it wasn't their day. That's where you will find Carl's comments. And if you also want to look at other stuff in there. So, yeah. Again, if you guys have your opinion on this, put in the comment section of this video. You can put in the chat, but probably if you want to put in the comment section of this video. But again, the hate is just completely unnecessary. And don't be a DARF. That's all I'm going to say. Don't be a DARF. Before you hit that enter button and send that comment or send that message, just think to yourself, was he doing this because he was stupid, or was he doing this because it was a logical business decision? So, yeah. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for, wow, we're here for 34 minutes. Dang. Thank you for joining me for this live stream talking about this, but I just hope it puts into perspective, guys. The costs have gone up. You got to do what you got to do to get to the track, even if it means a DNQ is coming. So at the end of the day, guys, it's the old saying, think before you type. Anyway, guys, I've been Colby Evans, Start and Park Car. Thank you for joining for this little segment. And yes, we will see you guys on Tuesday for our 1,000 subscriber special. Again, I thank you guys so much for getting me to 1,000 subs, and we will be there for that giveaway show. Tune in on Tuesday. All you have to do to be entered is like and subscribe to the channel. That's all you have to do to be entered, and we'll pick 5 winners. So we'll see you all on Tuesday, and I'm signing off, and you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. So long, guys.